and welcome to Retro Warriors episode 449. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by our producer, Guy.
Woo.
Hi, Guy. For the first time...
You're not, as always, joined by me, sir.
No, but it was on autopilot. I couldn't stop it. It just was doing it. It just comes out of me. So in first time in 449 episodes, one of us is sick and cannot record the show. Saturn is sick at home, so he's not going to be on this episode or the next episode. He's okay. He's recuperating. He just is not feeling up to recording, and we don't want to push it into his work week because he works a lot, and we don't want him to have to do that because that sucks.
Yeah,
so,
I'm excited for him to come back.
Yeah, me too.
Not because I don't enjoy recording, but I'm excited for him to tell his story because it's a story.
We did last night. For the record, we did make him go to the ER. He told us what was going on, and he was like, well, I was going to go to the ER in the morning, and we were like, no, you need to go now. It's like, do you think? And we were like, yes, get off the call and go to the emergency room.
And it's just general advice to dear listener. If you think, well, I'll go to the emergency room in the morning.
Yeah, maybe
just
go now.
Yeah.
Maybe go now.
The night is long and
hours,
full of dangers.
8 hours isn't going to help you. So, you know. But he's totally fine. He's medicated. They gave him a bunch of shots. He's at home recuperating. He says the medication he's on now is making him real sleepy, so we're just going to let him rest and recuperate and feel better. And hopefully he'll be back I would hope he'd be back in a couple weeks. Maybe he'll love it. Maybe he'll be like, you know what? I enjoyed not doing the show so much that I'm going to continue not doing it.
You thought you were going to make it to 500 and you didn't even make it to 450. How dare you?
So yeah, he will not be on this episode. He will not be on next episode, but thankfully he did not write any of the 12 pages of notes for these two episodes, because we were doing these episodes so that he could kind of have a break from the show and focus on his new job he just started. So it actually kind of works out perfect. So hopefully it all just is smooth and seamless and you know, it'll be great. Guy's here.
Yeah. Justin said he wrote all the notes and all I have to do is sit here and nod and smile. So
yeah, well, no, you have to say don't just nod and I can't see you, so it would be very
like
bad.
You problem, sir.
My week, I did pick up a new laptop. I've been kind of laptop shopping for a little while. My desktop is getting sort of long in the tooth. I've had a 2 laptops situation. One of which is a few years old and was never really capable of any kind of gaming whatsoever. And even in the realm of like, no dedicated GPU laptops, it's pretty rough. Like it's one of those weird laptop chipsets that it's just not a very good one, you know? I
immediately pictured you with 2 laptops. Like, I know this is not your setup at all, but like 2 laptops on the couch in your living room with like those, sofa desks or whatever on either side.
Yeah. Yeah,
and like just play like double boxing WoW or something.
Yeah, a hand on each laptop, like the Matrix.
Yeah. With your sunglasses on.
So my other laptop is an old, like 10-year-old ThinkPad that I bought from someone in Discord and fixed up as much as I could, but it's still a 10-year-old ThinkPad. So it is missing some modern creature comforts, to say the least. And I thought, well, rather than upgrade my desktop, I think I want to go for a laptop this time around. And so I was planning on picking up the Framework 16. That is the laptop I want, like spiritually. But for a lot less money, I could get a lot more computer right now rather than wait 6 months for a lot less computer for a lot more money. So I ended up picking up a new laptop. It is an i9 with a 4080. And it does the video games real nice, and it has
Yesterday you were getting 170 FPS on Destiny or some such.
Yeah, well, I put in performance mode, and I was like 180, 190. But it comes with a 240 hertz screen with G-Sync. So it's really, really good for first-person shooter stuff. And so I kind of went down a first-person shooter rabbit hole of playing a whole shitload of first-person shooters just because it was nice. It's a very nice computer for that with the extremely high refresh rate and G-Sync. And I also picked up a new mouse because my old Razer mouse just sucks. It's always sucked since I got it on clearance. And now the battery is so bad that it wasn't lasting me a day. So I was like, well, fuck this thing. So equipped with my new laptop.
Wireless mouse?
I do use a wireless mouse. On my desktop, I use a wired mouse because I'm at a desk, so who cares? But my mobile mouse is a wireless mouse. So I switched to the G502X wireless, which is one of Logitech's like light speed things that's supposed to be like ultra mega low latency. And so between the 240 hertz screen and my new mouse and the new laptop, it's great, man. I'm running like older FPS games at like maxed out at 240 FPS on a 240 hertz display. It's great. It's so snappy.
Doom is fantastic.
Yeah. Wow. I immediately went to
Doom, but whatever.
Doom 2. I heard Doom 2. I immediately went to Counter-Strike. I hadn't really played Counter-Strike since Go was turned into Counter-Strike 2. And so I was playing versus bots, and I was like, this is really fun. And someone in the Discord was like, yeah, I like Counter-Strike, but I don't want to do the competitive thing. The game's way too competitive for me. And I was like, yeah, well, I just like playing like humans versus bots and just hanging out. Like that's how I enjoy the game. And they were like, well, we should do that. So we did. We got together on voice chat, and we were going to play Counter-Strike 2 just like us versus some bots. And first of all, the game looks gorgeous. Beautiful looking game. Love it. Plays great, feels great, very excited. And we cannot, because you played Counter-Strike Go with me. I mean, getting into a bot match with friends was as easy as just like, all right, you join my game and we hit the bots practice with bots button and it just goes. That is not a feature in Counter-Strike 2.
Wait, they released a game that's a sequel with less features?
Yes, they did. And that's not the only feature it's missing. It's missing many features. In fact, they just added arms race to it, which was not in the game until now. So
I like that mode.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't in it it came out like last August, and it hasn't been in it this whole time. And so I was like, well, that's fine. We'll boot up Counter-Strike Go because you can like right click and go to properties and hit beta and downgrade the game to Go. Except that none of the online features for Go work. They're all fully shut down. So you can't do that. And so the only way to play a match with friends versus bots is to run a dedicated server, which is not very well documented. Even Valve's documentation on it is really super shitty. And after several hours of getting it set up, the dedicated server runs like dog shit. And so just fuck Valve. Just fuck Valve all up and down for this shit. Like, don't release the fucking sequel to your game and call it 2 and have it have less features. I don't fucking I get it. It is the like premier fucking esports game, and the 99.99999% of the people, that's all they give a shit about. But it's also just a really well-built shooty gun game that has no story, and you can jump straight into shooting dudes with guns. It's really good for that. And now my preferred mode of play just doesn't exist anymore. It's just gone. And so I went back to Source and 1.6, which both still play great and work great. And they're easy, and they have bots, and online works, and everything's awesome. So I don't really understand why they fucked Counter-Strike 2 so bad.
It's because you're bad at games. And
that must be it. It's just, I don't know. You just
gotta get good.
Like, I know that it's completely antithetical to the entire framework of Counter-Strike, but I do not like it as a competitive game. I don't enjoy that. I just want to, like, because here's what so on 360, I was really into Rainbow Six Vegas. Did you play either of those?
No, I always wanted to, but no.
There's a mode in it, and it was called like Terrorist Hunt or something like that. And it was just you. I know. I was playing Counter-Strike at Andrew's house because we were troubleshooting some audio issues, and we were waiting on Pablo to get back to us. And I had Counter-Strike on my laptop, and it goes, the terrorist team won. And so the game goes, terrorists win. And Andrew whipped around real fast and goes, the terrorists won? I was like, I'm sorry, Andrew. Sorry, I had to find out this way. Anyway, it would be a team of humans. So you and your friends, and you would be like infiltrating a complex that was full of, like terrorists that had took it over. And you would go in and just kind of like, as a team, work your way through this like PvE thing. And it was very fun because I like tactical shooters. I don't like competitive tactical shooters, right? And that's
that makes sense. Yeah,
it's a very weird niche to be in, apparently. And that was amazing. And that's the same kind of fun I get out of Counter-Strike, me and some humans versus bots. That's how it feels to me, and I like that a lot. And so I'm very frustrated that Counter-Strike 2 would remove such a basic ass feature. Like, really, honestly, why? Just why?
Never mind. That's a bad joke.
I also I ran the gamut of FPS games. I've been playing Battlefield Bad Company 2, which is not on Steam anymore. You can't buy it. But it is a very, very good first-person shooter campaign game. So I highly recommend everyone go pirate that, please, because they won't let you purchase it, so you might as well steal it. Still really fun. I played a little bit of Call of Duty World at War, which is it's based on the Call of Duty 4 engine, but it's World War II. Played some Sniper Elite 4, which is kind of more like tactical espionage action than it is really full-on FPS.
You mean that Metal Gear game?
It's kind of like that. And then I went classic. Return to Castle Wolfenstein, still very fun. I played a whole bunch of Doom Eternal, which, let me tell you, Doom Eternal with a really good mouse at 240 FPS is awesome. It's really cool.
Did you blink at all?
You can't, right? You just have to like pause the game every 5 minutes and like put eye drops in. That's the only way. It really is fucking blistering.
I got a robot to do that.
And then I was like, I kind of want to play Halo Infinite because I do enjoy the campaign in Infinite, right? Because I like that feeling of like just sort of aimless PvE wandering through the world kind of FPS. And a lot of them are very like story, cutscene driven, level driven, right?
Yeah.
And I don't like those breaks in my FPS. I don't want to go watch a 5-minute cutscene. I just want to shoot the things and move forward. Like, that's what I'm here to do. And so Halo Infinite was on sale on Steam, so I picked it up. And I boot the game up, and I logged into my Xbox account or whatever. And it synced all of my multiplayer stuff. So it's like, here's all your, like, skins and shit or whatever. I don't remember what all the multiplayer stuff is, but here's your stuff. And I go log into the campaign.
Helmets, didn't we?
Do what?
Didn't we have cat helmets or helmets with cat ears?
Something like that. So I'm like, cool. And I hit campaign and it loads up the campaign and it gives me an option to start a new campaign. My campaign didn't sync. So I'm trying to figure out what the fuck happened. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll install the Game Pass version off of the Microsoft Store and then I'll copy my save file over. But you can't, because the save files are some kind of weird encrypted or some shit. There is currently no way to move your save from the Game Pass version of Halo Infinite to the Steam version of Halo Infinite. And I was like, all right, that's fine. In my new laptop, it came with a 1 terabyte drive, and I added a 4 terabyte game drive. And I formatted it as exFAT because I plan to dual boot Linux, and Linux doesn't like NTFS. And I'm like, all right, that's fine. I'll just refund the Steam version, and I'll move the gigantic Halo Infinite install to my game drive that I have. Except you can't, because you cannot install UWP Windows games on anything other than an NTFS drive. It won't let you. So it has to stay on my main drive. I'm so, at this point, I'm so fucking annoyed that there's no way to move my save, that I can't install games on a drive the way that I want. Like, at what point did this stop being my computer that I own with my files and shit on it? And fuck you, Microsoft. And so I eventually just gave up the Halo fight entirely and just refunded it on Steam. And I put it in a little box and was like, can't sync save. Do what?
Isn't the whole thing about Halo not giving up the fight?
It is, and I did. What is the little tagline? It's like, continue the fight. Is that it?
I have no idea.
Something the fight.
I feel like it's finished the fight, but that's also like
that doesn't sound
Halo
right.
Halo never ended.
It's Halo, keep doing the fight, I think is what it is. I think that's
fight. The Halo and Cortana show.
Yeah. Later, it's just going to say Halo : fight, and that's going to be the whole. They're just going to shorten it down.
It turns into a competitive tournament game, fighting game.
Just lots of FPS games. I think the standouts ended up being Doom Eternal, which is still great. Bad Company 2, which was still surprisingly good. And then I'm really enjoying Counter-Strike 1.6, which in addition to working well, as long as you uninstall the newest update from Valve, because remember they did that 25th anniversary update for their Gold Source engine games. And it fucks them on a lot of levels and makes them incompatible with most mods. So you do have to downgrade them to the pre-25th anniversary update, and then they work great. So I've been enjoying those shooty gun games a lot. And I'm so glad Saturn wasn't here to fall asleep while I talked about shooty gun games the whole time. So, Guy,
I'm just kidding.
This is where you make some joke about how you can't tell the difference between Doom and Counter-Strike, and then I make a joke about how all RPGs are just filling bars.
Both of those things are accurate, so it's fine. I've seen Counter-Strike demons. Damn it.
What have you been playing?
Madden on Game Pass.
Oh.
Yeah, let's put you to sleep now. Yeah, no, like a coworker of mine was talking the other day about how he and his buddies play Madden or whatever. Oh, I like Madden. It's a good game. I enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, are you any good? I'm like, no, kind of, maybe. I don't know. So I decided to go get good at the game.
Yeah. As they say, get good.
Take that on. And like, I'm at a point now where when I play against people online in ranked games, when I lose, I know why I lost strategically.
Mm-hmm.
And so my skill level and like player level in the game isn't a hindrance. It's my decision making, which is a good place to be, right?
That's good. So you understand the game enough to make the strategic decisions. You're just not making the good ones yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Or I'm making the good ones enough to win games, but also when I lose, I'm like, oh no, that was obviously incorrect.
Yeah.
And here's why. So yeah, I don't know. It's been a lot of fun. I have spent zero money on it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I do enjoy. I've played football games and enjoyed them. I don't think I would enjoy the level of complexity and detail they have now anymore.
Yeah.
But I back in the day, like I would get like a 2 or 3 year old Madden game and play it for a weekend every once in a while. Like it's fun just from a strategic kind of gameplay sort of element. And I think Game Pass not buying microtransactions, basically playing included in your subscription is kind of, that's a good way to do it. That's valid.
Yep. It's and like they released the newest version right before the Super Bowl, which is good timing, I guess.
Did they fix the cover? It was Madden that had that really god awful cover a year or two ago, wasn't it?
I don't know. They have a new cover every year.
Oh, I know that. But
I can't tell if they're good or god awful. Usually it's just a player and some art.
No, it wasn't that. It was like this weird like collage thing on like a white background. It was just very, I don't know. It was very bizarre. I was just wondering if they stuck to that or if they fixed it or not.
Oh no, they went back to color. I think that was a special
it's just the normal
thing.
It's a dude and then it says Madden whichever one and then that's it.
Yep.
Is it still a thing in the football circles to be like, oh, they got to be the dude on the cover of Madden?
I mean, yeah, there's is
there a little bit of prestige with that, or is it?
There's a little bit of prestige, and there's at this point there's superstition because like in the early aughts and like I guess just the aughts and early teens, like within a year or two of being a Madden cover athlete, it seems like a majority of them were then like critically injured for a year.
Oh no!
It's like a Madden cover curse for a minute.
Oh, weird. I'm surprised they didn't start declining and just like put a ref or something on the cover. Just
Right.
Let's put John Madden. John Madden's not alive anymore, is he?
He died 2 years ago, maybe last year, like 2022.
I mean, he was one of those people that was like old when I was young, so I just assumed he wasn't still with us. But they could put him back on the cover. Wasn't he on the cover in the game in like the early years? It was like John Madden on the front of it.
He was, and they do have like this year was a special like John Madden edition kind of thing.
Oh, so wasn't the differentiating factor with John Madden football games that like his voice would be in the game, like calling the plays and stuff? Is that? I mean,
he stopped doing that in like the mid-aughts.
So then, what makes it a Madden game rather than just EA Sports presents the NFL?
Consecutive sequels? I don't know.
I was just wondering if they had any John Madden specific, like, is there a John Madden in the settings or like what is, I just didn't know if they still
just pretend, I guess, like the white stripes, like when if what's his face left and somebody else joined, and then what's her face on the drums left and somebody else joined, it's still the white stripes technically, right?
Right, but the White Stripes is a name. It wasn't called like Jack White. Like if it was, then it'd be like, all right, it was kind of weird that you call it that after he left. I don't know. I was just wondering. I didn't know if like the last time I played Madden, John Madden's voice was in the game, and you're like, all right, what's Madden football? Because Madden is in it talking. So all right, that makes sense.
Now I think the name has become such a big brand in and of itself that they're never going to change it. Yeah.
They could get Frank Caliendo to come in, do a John Madden impression. He always did a pretty good one.
That sounds respectful of the dead.
All right, well, maybe not now that he's dead, but before he was dead, they could have done it. All right, it would have been good. Now we got to wait a couple extra years because you don't want to do it right after he passes, but like maybe 5 or 6 years later, like, hey, let's get Frank Caliendo in here. Maybe we can.
Are you kidding? In 5 or 6 years, it'll be AI John Madden.
Yeah, that's true. Now I'm sad. Let's do the news.
I like that I make you sad, like, and then you transition, and like usually it's like pre-show to show, right? Now everybody gets to hear it.
Rumors point to possible new handhelds from either Sony, Microsoft, or both. I fucking doubt it. This is my assessment. I mean, don't see.
Sony's got their PS5 streamer.
Yeah, but that's just literally a PS5 mirroring device. That is all that it does. Is it will let you play your PS5. Like I don't know. I don't see Microsoft making a handheld. I don't see them do it. I really. All right, Sony maybe, slim chance. I don't see Microsoft doing it at all. Don't see that happening.
Well, maybe they're going to pivot. They're not going to release the Xbox 2 or whatever, Xbox Series Y.
At this point, they can't release a new Xbox because they're out of names. They've gone through every iteration of naming schemes, and they're just fucking out of it. So they can't do anything. The Switch has sold 32 million lifetime units in Japan, making it the third highest selling console in Japanese history, behind the Game Boy / Game Boy Color at 32.47 million and the Nintendo DS at 32.99 million. That's a lot of consoles. Do what?
Didn't they sell like a Wii U too? I mean, Nintendo's doing all right.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Wii U did not. I don't know that it's even fair to say that they sold a Wii U. It sold abysmally. The Wii U sold so good that it made the GameCube sales look better in retrospect.
No, I meant like literally, I thought there was some country that like sold a single Wii U this year.
Oh, yeah, I remember. God, what was that? I don't remember, but yeah, there was some weird ass story where they're like, "Oh, someone sold a Wii U. Why?
Why?"
Konami is releasing Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days for Steam and Switch. Included games are still to be announced. I'm excited for this. A lot of the old Yu-Gi-Oh! Games are very fondly remembered, but as someone who isn't a Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan, it's hard for me to decipher which of the 70,000 games there are to like bother spending time with.
Do you think in the early games the HP of the monsters was like 10?
No, it wasn't. It started because I was playing. This is how old I am for our younger listeners. I played Yu-Gi-Oh! Like right when it came out. right? It hit the American scene, and we were like, what is this new game? And it was out of the gate. Everything was 1,000 plus. It was all just gigantic numbers. And
it's not 20, 30 years of power creep.
No, they started high. They were like, well, I think what it is they're like, well, we got to catch up to all these other games. You know what it is? I'll tell you what it is that, because I was in middle school when Yu-Gi-Oh hit.
Mm-hmm.
And Yu-Gi-Oh was, so like Pokemon felt very grade school. Okay. Because when I hit middle school, we hadn't reached the age where Pokemon was just the ubiquitous every age loves Pokemon thing yet, right?
Oh, it was a baby's toy.
There was this period, this kind of growing period where competing stuff, it was like you were sort of expected to graduate. So if you were playing the Pokemon card game, well, that was a baby game for babies. Now we're in middle school, we play Yu-Gi-Oh, and then in high school we play Magic the Gathering. You graduated, right? And having the bigger numbers made it feel like an older kid game.
Ah, okay.
So it was like these bigger numbers were like, well, it's like, oh, your fucking Charizard does 60 damage. My guy does 10,000. You know, like that's so because I remember saying that shit, I can tell you that was the case. I'm excited for this. I'm going to check it out. I think I would be interested to see a curated list of old Yu-Gi-Oh games to kind of goof off with.
Then you get to Magic the Gathering. You're like, oh, your creature's a 1/1, and like, yeah, watch this. Here's 30 of them.
This is stupid. The Xbox release of Final Fantasy XIV will require Game Pass Core, Game Pass Console, or Game Pass Ultimate to play, making it a game that you have to basically have 2 subscriptions to play on Xbox, which is stupid and dumb. But I think just going to be kind of standard moving forward because fuck us, right? We're just consumers and we suck. So
wait, you can't buy it separately on its own?
Well, you have to buy the game.
Oh.
And then you have to pay for the subscription to the game. And then you also have to have paid for a subscription to one of the Game Pass flavors.
Oh, right. Because it replaced Xbox Live, right?
Yeah. So basically you have to pay 3 separate prices, 3 separate fees to play Final Fantasy XIV on Xbox.
I mean, it's fair. You got to do the same thing on PS4 or 5, right?
No, you can play online subscription-based games without paying for PS Plus, is my understanding.
Wow.
And that's why this is newsworthy.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Tencent making a mobile port of Elden Ring is a weird thing that is happening right now. And I was reading that they are reporting that progress is slow. And I'm not shocked at all.
Yeah, like all the devices it's going on.
I'm a little sad to see that I know Elden Ring isn't technically one of the Souls games, but it kind of like, it is. It's considered in the same lineage.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
It kind of makes me sad that it's getting diluted with this stuff. This is a franchise that has so far been pretty free of this kind of like periphery mobile game microtransaction scummery. So it's I'm a little sad that it's going that route.
It'll happen to you.
Eventually. Retrobit are releasing previously Japan-exclusive SNES cult classic I'm going to butcher it. Majuo, King of Demons in Western markets via limited release. I don't know of this game, but Retrobit's done a few different reissues and compilation cartridges before, so I'm glad to see that they're still kind of putting those out there.
I feel like that's an entirely Saturn news item.
Yes, that's in there for him, and he's not here. Take-Two Interactive says that they can't be liable for stealing virtual currency because virtual currency is, quote, a fiction. And I think this pairs nicely with that Ubisoft news a couple weeks ago about how Ubisoft wants us to be comfortable not owning our games.
Mm-hmm.
It all just kind of, they're saying the quiet parts out loud now is what's happening. And it's very telling. Very telling. Designer Laura Lynn McWilliams, who worked on Daggerfall, Alpha Centauri, Pirates, Full Spectrum Warrior, and Free Realms, has passed away at age 58.
That's young.
That's very young. That's terribly sad.
It gets younger every year,
That's rough, man. That's very sad. Super Mario Brothers 1 speedrunner has tied the time-assisted time for stage 8-4. Also some Saturn news because I don't follow the speedrunning scene, but good for that person who we didn't name in the news. Atari is reprinting classic Atari 7800 games, Food Fight and Ninja Golf. Ninja Golf, I think, is pretty beloved in the Atari 7800 world, from my understanding.
I own Food Fight for the 7800. That's a fantastic game.
But did you own Ninja Golf?
No.
I don't know anything about Ninja Golf. I presume, are ninjas playing golf?
Maybe you're throwing shurikens at poles.
Maybe. It's also possible. And finally, Acquire, makers of Tenchu, Way of the Samurai, What Did I Do to Deserve This, My Lord, Oculus Trip, Octopath Traveler, etc., has been acquired by media conglomerate Kadokawa. Kadokawa Corporation is just kind of one of those big giant companies that owns that what they do is they own a bunch of other companies.
I feel like this item is in there entirely for the irony of it.
Why? What? Oh, because they're called Acquire?
Yeah, and they've been acquired.
So, yeah, just more consolidation in the market. I don't think any of us are shocked by this. From Software is owned by Kadokawa. I didn't see any other major ones that I recognized immediately, but there's a lot of stuff in their roster there.
I had this weird, before we move on, I had this weird thing the other day where I was talking to some coworkers of mine, and they were telling me about, like our company's history or whatnot, and not like explicitly, but just talking about like different times different companies were acquired, and we're like the largest thing. We're one of the largest people in our space, right? So we've acquired lots of companies.
Yeah.
And they rattled off like 4 or 5, and I had applied to like jobs at like all of them, and it was this weird moment of like, oh, no matter what, I would have ended here.
It is inevitable. Thanks, corporate consolidation. Eventually, you're just gonna in the future send your one resume to the one. It's just gonna be called like the company TM. And then they'll choose whether or not you get to engage in society or not. And then,
the AI will say no immediately.
Which brings us to our topic at hand, which is classic MMO Bootcamp, which I have to make some notes on scope immediately. Some very expansive notes on scope. First of all, this is not a comprehensive list of all pre-WoW MMOs, and World of Warcraft is where I'm delineating between classic MMOs and modern MMOs, because everything WoW and forward, for a lot of years, stuff was just trying to be WoW, and the stuff that wasn't trying to be WoW failed because it wasn't enough like WoW. WoW really dominated and reshaped a huge amount of the genre, and still kind of continues to. So that's sort of my line in the sand here.
Such money, much WoW.
Yes. There are inevitably dozens of titles and projects that I have missed in my bootcamp, and covering this topic could literally be its own entire long-running podcast. So please forgive the brevity, because it is going to be very brief. Additionally, each game in this list is big enough to consume years of someone's life individually. We are not experts, or in most cases, even novices of a lot of these games. Many of them we've never even gotten the chance to play. I tried to play several of them in my research, but their entire MMOs, it's really hard to get very far in them.
I kind of want to look into like some like still alive mud servers.
Oh, I'm going to talk about some of those. So you're my perfect audience, right?
Great.
So let's talk first encounters with MMOs. My first proper stab at MMOs was World of Warcraft, which I got for free from my GameStop manager like right after launch. And I greatly enjoyed it, but I found it hard to keep pace with friends, and eventually kind of maintained an on-again, off-again relationship with the genre ever since. That said, I've played virtually, at least a little bit of virtually every big MMO post-WoW. At least once. I mean, all of them. Star Trek Online, Star Wars Online, Lineage 2, I did EverQuest 2, I did Lord of the Rings Online when it launched, I did Vanguard Online when it launched, I did I'm trying to think of other ones. There's a bunch. I played all of them when they came out. I played Final Fantasy 14 in 1.0 when it came out, and then I played Realm Reborn when that came out. I've played a lot of them. Black Desert Online. I've played tons of them. Tons of MMOs.
Stop bragging. God damn it.
I'm very cool and interesting. And I've never found one that I stuck with, one that really spoke to me. And finally, in the last several months, I kind of got this itch of like, maybe something, from before WoW, because I've never gone to this pre-WoW space, because it is the weird Wild West of MMOs, right? Like, before WoW consolidated so much of the genre, shit was weird in that before time. And so I was like, well, let's look at some classic stuff and let's see what's going on there and what might be compelling there. And so this is how we ended up where we are now. What about you, Guy? What about you in MMOs?
I think my first, I suppose, experience is like watching cousins and various friends. I'd go over to their house in like the late 90s. And they were just staring at like scrolls of green text constantly.
Yes.
I'm like, what is this? They're like, oh, it's a MUD. It's really cool. There's a bunch of people and you just read a bunch of text and you tell it you want to go west a lot. Mm-hmm. And there's wizards and, oh, I'm dead. What? Yeah, I don't know. I didn't understand MUDs. The text was way too fast for me, and like, I assume they like shortcut read it or whatever. Like, nobody reads that actually fast. But
also in MUDs, like when you go to a zone, the description is always the same and stuff. So like you get used to the zones, and you're like, all right, well, I don't need to read the description of this place. I know where I am, and I can just start typing shit.
Yeah, it was always funny just kind of hanging out with somebody and chatting and listening to music or whatnot. And then all of a sudden they're furiously like tapping their keyboard. Like, oh no, I'm dying. I
didn't do MUDs. I've played some MUDs, but I didn't really get into them. I did when Yahoo and AOL Instant Messenger were things. I did get really into real-time role-playing channels. And
nice.
those were kind of in the same idea as a MUD, except there was no game framework. Like you all created everything, which was kind of similar in a way. I was really into that for a little bit.
Nice. Yeah. Well, and then like my first actual experience playing MMO was playing EverQuest in like 2002 ish.
Mm-hmm. That would have been like Planes of Power expansion ?
Yeah, I have no idea. It's at this point that's 22 years ago. So I've done things since then. But I had my boss at Speed Zone. I worked at Speed Zone as a game tech. I'd go and unstick people's cards and clean games.
Yeah,
I thought I was gonna do cool shit. No, that's not at all. But anyway, but my boss was into EverQuest. He's like, you should play. I'm like, okay. And then I played for like a couple hours, and I was like, I gotta pay $15 a month for this. Okay.
Yeah, I will say that I looked it up. That is the Planes of Power era. That is an extremely divisive era of EQ. Like that was when a lot of people were like, "I'm done." There's a big line in the sand in the Planes of Power era.
Well, that's good to know. And then a couple years later, I played WoW. Like when it first came out. Like I was in, or no. I had a friend of mine who was in the closed beta. Mm-hmm. And so we like took turns to that sort of beta weekend and took like slices of time and created characters and played.
Yeah.
And so I was in it from then, and like that was 2004. I was in college and single. So
that is the killer combo for MMOs.
My God. I played
single and in college.
I played so much WoW, like between 04 and 07 ish.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like we went back to playing WoW Classic. I know this isn't an episode about WoW, but we went back to playing WoW Classic, and I think I'm at the point where I'm like, nah, everybody else is just way too far ahead of me.
Yeah, that's the difficult part of it. Well, let's get into kind of talking about the genre, where it started, its roots. I do want to take a minute to sort of define the genre, which is difficult because It's very broad to begin with. So the definition I wrote is a role-playing game that you can play in a simultaneous, persistent world that is universally hosted, meaning officially hosted by the people running the game, and everyone has universal access to it, presuming you have the game and pay the subscription or whatever is required, with a large amount of other active players playing in the same fashion in real time. And anything less specific than that just kind of includes all online games, and anything more specific starts to exclude some important titles. So that's kind of as far as I could take the definition, realistically, which I realize now doesn't even say anything about being a role-playing game.
Or really what you were trying to define either. Like you're like, I want these games in here. I'm sculpting the definition.
Yeah. It's hard because when you start getting more specific than like persistent online RPG, you start to cut things out of the fringes of the
even
genre.
If you just say you have an avatar, you start cutting things out, right? Like,
no, I think that one's pretty universal. I think we could at least include you inhabit a single avatar that represents you within the world. I think that one's usually pretty. I think that's is specific as you could make it. But I think it works.
All right, fair enough.
So I like to do this in the boot camps. I like to talk about history and kind of early proto versions of this genre. And I've got it kind of broken down here into the beginnings, commercial success pre-internet, and commercial success post-internet. And the post-internet era is the one that we're all mostly going to recognize, but I did want to talk about sort of the lead-up, starting with Maze, also known as Maze War in 1974, which is not only the first-person shooter game, but was the first networked game. This was made by high school students for the MLAC PDS-1 mini computer during a study program at a NASA research center.
That sounds about right.
Programmed by Steve Colley, Greg Thompson, and Howard Palmer. The PDS-1 had vector graphics display and portrait orientation and cost $8,300 before any additional components in 1970 when it hit the market, which is $65,618 in 2024 dollars. And it was a surprisingly sophisticated game. It was ported by its creators to a bunch of different systems. It is basically like you are in first-person view walking around a maze, and you can shoot a little bead goes out of you, and you can hit people. And that's it. But it was networked. I believe, I don't know if the original version had it, but some versions of it had real-time chat built into it. And over time, different variants of it kind of started to appear from other programmers and on other systems. There is a famous version with like an eyeball where everyone's represented by an eyeball that came a little bit later. And so it's kind of the beginning of like, hey, you are inhabiting an individual character in a networked environment, was 1974. It's the first time we really see this. And it was probably, in the realm of MMORPGs, wasn't massive, wasn't an RPG, but it was an O. And that's it. It was online. And it was a game. It was an O and a G. So we got two letters on our Wheel of Fortune board.
Is it MO? It's multiplayer online.
All right. It's a MOG. We got three letters, which is pretty good for 1974. Later came Mud. Roy Trubshaw began working on a game he called Mud, which stood for Multi-User Dungeon, which would later come to be known as the name of the genre, right? This was in 1978. He was inspired by games like Dungeon, which itself was inspired by Zork. It was a text-based, networked, multi-user dungeon. So this is where the Mud happens a few years later in the late 70s, which kind of dovetails quickly into Avalon, The Legend Lives, which is another Mud, as the genre came to be called. And this was created years later. So the first Mud comes out in 1978, and then a bunch of Muds happen. There's different Muds popping up here and there on different campuses in different networks, everywhere.
Yale Mud, Harvard Mud, Butt Mud.
Yeah, the Butt Mud. Avalon The Legend Lives is important. It was created in 1989 by Yehuda Simmons, and Simmons was originally working on a smaller Mud for 4 to 8 players, but it evolved into what would become Avalon in 1988. And I put Avalon in the notes because it is still running right now. You can go play Avalon now. It features over 21,000 locations in 60 areas. And it, as far as I can tell, because a lot of these games, specifically MMOs, have been kind of like they died and then they came back, or they shifted, or they moved companies. I think Avalon may have been running continuously since back then. I'm sure at some point they had to do some kind of reset or upgrade, but it's still there. You can go Google Avalon: The Legend Lives, and there it is. The game's out there. In this kind of really early era, so we're talking mid 70s up through late 80s. There were other multiplayer RPG games. There were a notable few on the Plato mainframe system, but none of them really took the form of a true MMORPG, and none of them had really been for profit up to this point. A lot of them were just things on college campuses or on different networks kind of scattered around the place. Which takes us into commercial success pre-internet. So Island of Kesmai, released in 1989 at $12 per hour on CompuServe. And this is the same year as Avalon: The Legend Lives. Lucasfilm made an MMORPG called Habitat in 1989, which was really more of a virtual village than really much of a game. At this time, this game and games like it were referred to as graphical muds.
Gmuds. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, Gmuds. There was a follow-up to Habitat in 1995 called Worlds Away that was billed as a virtual chat program.
Sorry.
What?
In Australia, they call them Gmuds.
Which brings us to 1991. So we finally hit the 90s. The internet is not really the internet yet this early. It's getting there. People are paying for access to some kind of web. I was hoping Saturn would be here to elucidate us on some of the more earlier web technologies, because I don't understand a lot of them. And I don't fully understand the transition from these pre-internet networks to the internet and how that occurred. But he's not, so here we are. You got us.
Instead, you got the guy with the CSE degree who aced his networking class but can't remember anything about the history of networking.
Well, Saturn's dad also worked for the phone company, so he just knows a lot about stuff like that.
Whatever. My stepdad worked for Motorola.
Well, then what's your problem?
I don't know. I'm just making all the reasons why I should know, and just I'm a dum-dum.
So, SSI published Neverwinter Nights. Not that one. It's a different one. This is a gold box Neverwinter Nights in 1999 or 1991, which is often considered the first real kind of discernible fantasy MMORPG by most modern standards. Being an SSI gold box game, it looks very much in line with that kind of visual style, and it was specifically hosted on AOL. You had to have AOL to log into Neverwinter Nights.
Well,
and
luckily, if you got like 50 CDs, then you're fine.
It was pretty successful for being what it was in the era. But after this is we're hitting, so that was, early 90s. We start hitting up into the mid 90s. And this is when the internet kind of hits the mainstream, right? This is when all of a sudden regular people give a shit about being on the internet.
Yep.
So in this era, we do see an explosion of games that hit the internet. We see The Realm Online and Meridian 59 both launching right next to each other in 1996. Meridian 59 is probably the earliest example of what a modern gamer might be able to visually recognize as an RPG, like an MMORPG. Mm-hmm. It looks very almost kind of Daggerfall-y. You are first-person fantasy milieu, free-moving with a mouse around a world, interacting with other players and NPCs and attacking monsters. It looks like someone now could look at it and go, oh, that's online? Oh, well, that's an MMO. It looks like one, right?
Nice. Yeah.
And so this is 1996, and Meridian 59 got a little bit of success, and then Ultima Online comes out a year later in 1997, and the entire genre is warped around the success of Ultima Online. Now, granted, this isn't necessarily giant mainstream success, but in the realm of computer gaming, Ultima Online was a big deal. It was a huge success story. It was put out by, the Lord British, was he, at this point, I don't remember which Ultima game we were on in 1996 or 1997. Ultima, I think 7. Would it have been 7?
Who knows? Maybe.
I'm not sure. But Ultima Online was a big success story. Likewise, EverQuest released 2 years later and continued to warp the genre around itself. So within this 2-year, 1997 and 99 span, we get two games that really codify the MMO genre, what people expect, what it looks like on the actual, in air quotes, proper internet that we recognize as the internet today.
Mm-hmm.
And they both enjoyed a lot of success. EverQuest enjoyed a good amount of mainstream success, which we'll talk about at a later date.
Willie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I guess we will.
And so between Ultima and EverQuest, this is when the genre really starts to get the notice of people that aren't like hardcore into burgeoning gaming technologies, right?
Yeah. It looks like 94 was Ultima 8 and 99 was Ultima 9. So you're square in between the two.
Oh man, they got real high real fast. I forget that the first 4 Ultimas basically look identical. They just crapped those out. So after Ultima and EverQuest, kind of that 1-2 punch, this is when we see the genre start to take off, start to get bigger noticed by bigger companies. Asheron's Call, despite troubled development, released in 1999 alongside EverQuest and was published by Microsoft themselves. Presumably they were interested because they were seeing successes like Ultima Online. A lot of people were excited about web technologies in the late 90s. It featured much smoother netcode compared to a lot of other MMOs and boasted a massive world with virtually no loading screens, except when entering instances specifically like dungeons. Like the actual world itself is not segmented at all. You can just go. And I played a good amount of Asheron's Call, and it's a goofy game, but I was pretty impressed by it, like at a technological 1999 3D MMO standard.
Did you play it recently, or did you play it when you were like 5?
No, I played it recently. I was playing on a fan server. I put in quite a few hours on the Levi-Strauss server, which is a non-botting server, because a lot of these older MMOs, and we're going to get into the ones that are still running, a lot of people bot on them, which is kind of like where a lot of MMOs go to die, is all of a sudden people are botting and stuff like this to make them more palatable to play today, because a lot of old MMOs demand a lot of time from people. Dark Age of Camelot comes out in 2001. It's by BioWare Mythic, and it really brought in the idea of PvP focus. Other games had PvP, like Ultima Online. There was no PvP or PvE. It was just Ultima Online. Everyone could kill everyone. You could loot people's corpses. That's just how the game worked.
Mm-hmm. What made this different?
Dark Age of Camelot was kind of built on a faction system where it was, I think it's 3 factions, and they're all specifically fighting each other. So the narrative of the game is driving this PvP conflict. It's not just like, oh, I want to kill that guy and take his loot. There's an actual narrative reason, and you are portions of these different factions that are the 3 of you all fighting each other. Kind of an idea that World of Warcraft kind of took with the Horde and Alliance kind of thing, where it's like, hey, no, you don't like those guys out of the gate.
Right.
And there are story reasons for it.
Yeah, like I don't know which faction I'd be, but I don't like the other 2.
Right, that's what you do know. RuneScape came out. It was a browser-based MMO programmed in Java, hit the scene in 2001. At the time, it was kind of regarded as like a game for kids, but it did gather quite a sizable following over the years, and it eventually progressed with in-place sequels, RuneScape 2 and 3, and they released and replaced the original client. But in 2013, the original version of the game, as of 2007 anyway, was re-released as old school RuneScape and is still running now today. Final Fantasy 11 comes out in 2002, cribbed a lot from EverQuest, but sort of added menus on top of it, which was interesting.
I played a lot of 11.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever got past like level 10 or whatever, but
that's where it gets hard.
Right, but I know I crossed that desert, damn it.
Yep. EVE Online hit the following year in 2003 and introduced a much needed genre shift. MMOs to this point were very focused on fantasy milieu, with few exceptions, but it also really brought about the idea of sophisticated player-run economies. Mm-hmm. Anyone that's played EVE Online, I've played a good amount of it. The player-run economies in the game are insane. People are running entire companies. It's not, you can join EVE Online and get a fucking job working for a company made by players in the game. It's bizarre. It is an insane experiment. And finally, that brings us.
Sorry.
Do what?
I played. I don't know why I'm apologizing for talking about the topic, but whatever.
How dare you?
How dare I? I played EVE Online off and on every, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, right? And every time I come to it, I'm like, okay, this sounds cool. I want to get into this, et cetera, et cetera. And then 3 or 4 weeks into it, I'm just flying from system to system with 5 jump points and be like, all right, cool.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
Finally, 2004, WoW and EverQuest 2 released, I believe, in the same month. And I can't think of a more fitting showdown to really illustrate what WoW did to the MMO market. WoW, EverQuest was still a juggernaut in 2004. It was like the granddaddy of MMOs. Ultima looked too old. EverQuest had gone through a graphical upgrade, still looked relatively modern, and still had a decent player base. And EverQuest 2 launches, the MMO is releasing a numbered sequel also the same month as this Warcraft MMO thing, we guess.
Yeah, and the chatter at the time was like, WoW's hoping to take some of EverQuest's audience, right?
And if you in your head, listener, right now, there are probably a lot of you going, there was an EverQuest 2? Oh, yeah, that's as much as you need to know. WoW hit and really upended the market. All of a sudden, it was just WoW. WoW was enormous, which sort of brings us into the modern day. So I want to talk briefly about kind of what sets classic MMOs apart from post-WoW MMOs. And then I want to talk about which ones are still running and how you can play them. And how you might be able to enjoy them today. To begin with, this is what I've learned about classic MMOs. They're not respectful of your time. Many of them include things like non-optional PvP, like Ultima, having your loot have to be recovered from your corpse, like in Ultima or EQ. They also demanded that players work together. There was little, sometimes no effort put into soloable areas of the games. They were difficult even with groups, and in some of them, it's dangerous just to be alone. Final Fantasy XI was kind of a later release in this sort of idea where it was very much a game where once you hit level 10, you're either in a party or you're not playing. Like, that's it. It carried that idea forward. Well, random dungeon finders, queues, party finders didn't exist. What were you going to say?
We've been conditioned to know that it's dangerous to go alone for 30
This is
years.
True. Games were heavily GM moderated. They had policies based on player behavior, which we're going to talk more about at a later date. But they're just a very different experience. They were not built to be convenient or accessible. They were built intentionally to be inconvenient and inaccessible, and you would overcome these obstacles through social play. At least that's the idea. That's the platonic ideal of how people were supposed to play these games. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about which ones you can still play today. I was very saddened to learn that Neverwinter Nights was shut down in 1997. There have been some fan efforts to make a single-player version of it available and playable, but I'm having trouble finding those files hosted, so I was not able to experience that. Meridian 59 is still alive and well. This was the 1996, I think it's 96? I got to scroll up now. 1996. Yeah, 1996. This was, again, one of the very early 3D free-moving fantasy MMO. 3DO shut the game down in 2000, but some old devs fired up a new company to re-release it and continue working on it. So at the same time as the shutdown, the game's server files were leaked and fan servers started to pop up. So there are even Meridian 59 fan servers still running from when the game was originally shut down in 2000.
Nice.
The company that took over the game shut down in 2010, but left the game up as a non-commercial enterprise, and then shortly thereafter released the source code and made it open source under GPL2. So they said, we're going to leave it up. The code was handed back to the original devs, and they said, we're releasing this under the GPL. So the game is free. It's on Steam. It's available for free on their website. It has many different versions and forks maintained by community members, and it's cool. It's okay. It's pretty old.
Your voice says it's not.
But it's fun. It's interesting from a historical perspective, and it's also at this point an open source MMO. Which, for anyone that has tried to look for an open source MMO, I have. There's not a lot. There's a couple of like failed, semi-failed, failing, forgotten projects out there. But Meridian 59 is an open source MMO that you can play today that costs nothing to play, that's free to download. You just go download it right off their website or just go get it on Steam. So it's cool that it still exists. It's cool that it's been preserved through the power of fan servers, basically stealing leaked server files and then eventually being open source. And this is the only game on the list that has been intentionally given back to the community in an actual legal way. So that's really cool to see. I mean, theoretically, that's what we would want to see for every MMO from a preservation perspective, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Is, you're shutting down the Final Fantasy XI servers? Cool, make the server files open source. Or at least usable in non-commercial formats, something like that. Ultima Online, still running. It ran under Origin Systems from 97 to 2004 when it was bought by EA before being promptly moved again in 2006 to their subsidiary, Mythic, formerly BioWare Mythic. The game finally got moved to Broadsword, who still maintains and runs the game. There are still active official servers. It costs $12.99 a month. You can go play Ultima Online right now.
Or you could not.
That said, there are lots of free UO servers. They call them shards with a D, not a T, with a D. I saw where that was going. They require a little bit of setup, but not a ton. Usually what it entails is downloading the official client, and then you run a utility over that alters the client to connect to these fan servers, right?
Okay, yeah.
What is cool about UO free shards is that some of them remove the more hardcore elements of the game, like open PvP, to make for an easier, more modern experience. Because again, these are not games that respect your time, but most of the people going to play UO free shards are probably adults with jobs and kids and lives and shit going on, just kind of statistically, right?
Yeah.
I don't imagine there's a lot of like, single in college 20-year-olds like, hey, let's play Ultima. So it's cool to see that although never officially given to the community, Ultima Online is still running in an unofficial capacity that is trying to work toward making it more accessible to what the community needs now, and the official one is still going.
I'm just imagining some dude bro who's like, oh man, they got like ultimate frisbee online, sweet. Sign up and just get hooked.
What is this? Where's the frisbees? EverQuest is still running, although the retail version of the game is largely unrecognizable from the free servers. I believe it was around 2005, EQEMU, so EQEMU, EQ Server Emulator, came out, and it was made from leaked server files. Basically, people capture the server data moving back and forth between the client and have reconstructed the server files in like a fan capacity. Collectively, emulated servers in EverQuest seem not only much more popular, but much more varied. Some of them are at different points in the game's history. I personally play on and recommend the Project 1999 server, which is emulated EverQuest up to the first 2 expansions. There are well over 100 options to choose from. The retail version of the game is free to play on Steam, with subscriptions that provide more content and account options starting at around $15 a month, but you can pay them up to $20 a month if you want experience boosts. I don't personally recommend EQ Retail. We're going to talk about that more next episode. But there's the EverQuest emulated server community is gigantic, and retail is there and it's free. So, it still exists. It hasn't gone anywhere. They're still releasing expansions.
Well,
Asheron's Call.
I'm sure if it's still up, there's an audience for it, right?
Right. There's a lot of people playing EverQuest, both on emulated servers and on retail. I'm in a lot of Discords thousands and thousands of people still invested in this.
I thought you were going to say thousands and thousands of Discords. Like, what did you do, Justin?
Thousands and thousands of Discords.
It's a huge community, I swear.
Asheron's Call the official game was shut down, but it is still running via fan servers. Fan servers exist for the game, so that's a thing, and you can still play them. I was playing on the Levi-Strauss server. There's a website called treestats.net that lists all current servers. There are a lot of them. Some of them have a reasonably sized player counts, but do be aware that a lot of these emulated servers, some of them allow either multi-boxing or botting. Botting is whenever obviously you have a program that plays the game for you. Multi-boxing is where you control multiple clients, meaning multiple characters at the same time. A lot of these old dead MMOs, they're not respectful of your time. So the way to get around that is to run multiple accounts. And since accounts don't cost anything, because these are all fan-run servers, it's easy to run your entire full party of 6 people on your computer using this one utility. There are some servers that are no multi-boxing, no botting, and the ones that are that will tell you that. So it's worth checking. In Asheron's Call, it's the Levi-Strauss server is the only no bot, no multi-boxing server that I could find. The community there was really great. Everyone was really nice. And Asheron's Call is a weird one. It definitely went a different route than EverQuest, even though they released kind of around the same time. And you feel it. It feels like the forgotten genre pivot that nobody else followed behind, but in a really kind of odd, interesting way. It does also still support a lot of plugins that make the game much more modern playable. They add things like a map, which is cool to have, because a lot of these old games, there were no maps. They expected you to draw a map or just memorize shit, I guess. I don't fucking know.
I'm the fucking map now.
Dark Age of Camelot, I was sad. It is still up and running via fan servers. The scene for it seems a bit smaller than like Asheron's Call or EverQuest fan servers, and a little less unified than other contemporaries. But there's still, a couple thousand people on the broader internet interested in DAOC. I didn't get a chance to play this one, but it's still the people that like Dark Age love it. It's the MMO for them, and if you are a PvP player, I would strongly encourage you to check it out if that's something that you're really hardcore into. Because the thing is, a lot of MMOs never really knew what the hell to do with PvP, and so what they would do, and what a lot of them still do, is they go, well, we'll just make servers where you have to PvP, and then those servers always have tiny populations. And so I think if you're that person that's always been saddened by the lack of PvP, classic MMOs are a good place to go to. But also Dark Age of Camelot is something that sort of makes it more of a feature of the game than just a thing that how else would we do it, like in Ultima, where they just didn't think to be like, well, what if you couldn't attack other players? Wouldn't that be nice?
Man, I had a college group of like 5 people or so.
Yeah.
We played WoW together. And I was the only one who was like, can we not play on a PvP server, please?
I cannot stand PvP in MMOs. I hate it, especially these old ones, because they're so disrespectful of your time that it's one thing to be annoyed because you have to do a corpse run. It's another thing to be annoyed because you lost 5 hours of progress because you de-leveled and cannot recover the loot off of your corpse to keep playing the game because some guy's camping you. That's not okay, right?
Yeah.
And I will say that even in the PvP circles of these classic MMOs, people are still pretty nice. They seem to recognize that they're slivers of communities compared to what they used to be, and people are usually pretty welcoming. Old school RuneScape not only has a more thriving community, but also a larger player base than the actual current modern version of the game. In a kind of bizarre shift, the community seems to have at large shunned the more recent microtransaction-laden RuneScape 3 and gone back to 2007 old school RuneScape, which is still officially run. There are some private servers for old school RuneScape, but they're very few and far between. Most of the community seems pretty happy with the free-to-play old school RuneScape client. It is about to get a big graphical overhaul, an official one that Jagex just recently announced. It's still a pretty robust and thriving game. It's very dense. Like when you log into old school RuneScape, there's a shitload of people on there playing. So it is definitely one that still feels very alive. And out of all the games on this list, it's kind of bizarre that old-ass Java browser-based RuneScape is one of the few that still feels like it's really thriving, right? There is a third-party client for it, an entire third-party client called RuneLite, and RuneLite has plugins built into it. And because the EverQuest, now it's a client. It's not. I don't think you can run it in a browser anymore. But the client for RuneScape is like 3 megabytes.
Oh,
because
nice.
again, it was a browser game from the early 2000s.
Right.
And so RuneLite will actually download the entire client whenever you launch RuneLite and run it within the framework of it and lets you add all sorts of graphical fixes, quest trackers, all sorts of built-in plugins. So old school RuneScape is with RuneLite a surprisingly modern feeling take on what is still an old jank-ass Java browser MMO. It's very weird. It's very bizarre to see, but people are really cool in the game. It still has a really big community. It's really well documented, and it's completely free, and it's a tiny fucking download. It's on Steam. You can just go load up old school RuneScape in Steam, and it's good. It's as good as RuneScape ever was, right?
Sure.
Which is still a little jank, but if what you want out of an MMO is really kind of almost an idle clicker game that also happens to be an MMO, nothing does it better than old school RuneScape. And I've played a decent amount of it. It's not the most intense or fast-paced thing, but if you just want to chat with some people and sometimes chop down a tree and I clicked on a goblin, now I'm killing him, I guess. It's good. It's good for that. And I know that sounds like I'm condemning it, but for the people that want that, you know who you are. Just a thing you can have on a fucking second monitor that you don't got to give your undivided attention to while you're at work. And you're like, cool, I'm skilling my tree chopping while I'm working, right? Like you can do that. The last one on my list is Final Fantasy XI because it's kind of the most recent. Despite the official game still running and still costing $15 a month to play, which sucks. There are a few fan servers floating around out there, as well as a subreddit dedicated to nothing but FF11 fan servers. I don't know the breakdown between populations of the collective fan servers and the official game. This is FF11 is a game that I think we're all still kind of waiting on them to pull the plug on because they have a successor MMO out.
They do?
They do. It's Final Fantasy 14. You think it would be 12. It's not. It's 14. EverQuest 2 didn't even make it on my list because it came out at the same time as WoW, so I didn't know which side of the fence to put it on, but that one is also still officially running. It's under the same company as the first EverQuest. It's Daybreak Games.
You put it under the fence and bury it very, very deep.
Yeah, that's what WoW did, is it's buried beneath the fence line. I was shocked. The reason I got so excited about this idea of checking out all these old MMOs is because some of these games were developed for years actively at a time. Like, just amount of content wise, even not very successful MMOs often outstrip gigantic MMO games as far as just the amount of content that they provide, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's so exciting that it's like I don't love retail EverQuest, but it's a game that has 25 fucking years of active development going into it. That's insane. That is an insane amount of shit. It's fucking nuts. Even games that only ran for 6 or 7 years. That's 6 or 7 years on top of the initial development time that of content. These are fascinating projects.
Do you think there's one person who's been designing trees for 25 years, hired in 99?
I think they're copy and pasting trees after release. I think they're like, oh, we need trees for this zone. And they're like, all right, go to the tree bin and fucking copy some of that shit over.
No. We need these tree models updated. Take them down to Jerry. It's his specialty. He gets mad if you don't.
The guy in the fucking basement, like, I had to put a nice oak tree over here. I don't know why I made him creepy.
This shit pays my salary.
It's nuts. Classic MMOs, they're weird. Being in these communities and hanging out in these communities, I see a lot of people basically lamenting the fact that we don't make classic style MMOs anymore. Everything is pretty much a WoW clone.
Mm-hmm.
And I share that sentiment. It's kind of sad. You know, there's a lot of weird shit. Like, all the games on this list are all pretty fucking different from one another.
Yeah.
Some of them radically different from one another. These are all weird ass games. Okay. And I like that. I saw, as I was doing research for this episode, someone referred to post-WoW MMOs. They called them tab target MMOs.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
It does, because WoW had tab targeting. It had intelligent tab targeting. And my first thought was like, well, how do you fucking target in older games? And the answer is that not very well at all a lot of the time. And it's a thing that I always found that I was finding frustrating in my research. And looking into these communities, people are like, no, properly targeting things is part of the challenge. For me, that's a UI misstep. I'm like, oh, you fucked up the UI. They're like, no. Properly targeting things when you need them is part of the gameplay and part of the challenge, and we like that. I never would have considered that, ever. To me, someone that grew up with tab target MMOs, as I now call them, I would be like, oh, well, I can't just push the one unified intelligent targeting button? Well, that sucks. What a sucky game. But it's not like that, you know. There is a lot of people in the old school MMO space that really lament that everything is tab target MMOs now. They really want this older style of MMO to combat these. I don't want to call them more hardcore games, because that's not what draws me to them.
Mm-hmm.
But they are more hardcore in a different way. More hardcore in a way that it's hardcore such that I need to work with my friends to overcome this challenge. Not hardcore in the way of like, oh, I'm gonna fucking put in 90,000 raid hours to get the whatever thing, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's been some projects in the old school MMO space. Monsters and Manuals is a big one right now that's very much riffing off of old school EQ that people are excited about. There's it's kind of half defunct now, but there is an MMO called Project Gorgon that was made by a husband and wife team. Recently, the wife got diagnosed with cancer, so the project has kind of ground to a halt, but it's been in Steam Early Access for years now. And these are all games that sort of adhere to this older style of MMO. And I think the unfortunate truth that I'm noticing is just that being less convenient games, they don't get as much attention as the much more convenient MMOs that still exist in the space, like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. You know?
Yeah. No, that's that sucks. Like I it's the same thing with we were talking about consolidation earlier or whatnot. Like,
yeah,
things become more homogenized and you lose a lot of that creativity, and that kind of sucks. I'm with you.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think like what the MMO genre is waiting for is kind of the Dark Souls of MMOs, and what I mean by that is a game that comes out and is traditionally challenging in a traditional way on purpose, and something that kind of like, because I don't want to sit around jerking off Dark Souls, because I think it gets jerked off plenty. it has met its jerked off quota, right? But
it ain't getting no prostate cancer.
I do think that there's a reason that Dark Souls got as big as it did, and it's something about this design of like, it is a design that rewards dedication, that rewards perseverance, that rewards wanting to overcome these challenges, and it sort of pivoted us away from, at the time, this very sort of quick time event laden, almost too cinematic era of gaming that we had sort of entered into in the Xbox 360 and PS3 era. And it felt like a return to form in some ways for a lot of people. Now, I'm not going to say how much I do or don't agree with that statement, but I think that's what it felt like for a lot of people. And I think that's what the MMO genre is looking for, is this thing that really embodies a more classic style of play in a way that is meaningful today. And
well, I mean, they made
just
that,
haven't had it.
That Conan game in like 2008 that was hard as balls. Nobody liked it.
Wait, which one? The Conan MMO?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one has fan servers still running too. I forgot to check in on that one. But,
Does it really?
I think so. There's some people that were like, yeah, Conan, man, that was... Here's the thing. This is the amazing thing about MMOs. I love... MMO fans are so interesting to me. Because a lot of these people are like, no, I've been playing the same game for 20 years. I don't want to stop. That dedication is fascinating to me. I don't have it. I'll never have it. I don't know that I want it. But it's fascinating to look at, right? Pick any MMO. I don't care what it is. There is someone out there that's like, that was the best fucking MMO they ever fucking made. And what I've learned is that it's a game that hit at just the right time in their life. And because of the nature of MMOs, it gets taken from them, right? You know, like the formative games in our lives, things like, you know, Super Mario Brothers 3 or Mario World or Super Metroid or you know, GoldenEye or whatever, you know, people our age, like whatever our formative games are. Mm-hmm. We still have them. But if your formative game was Neverwinter Nights via AOL in 1991, that's been taken from you. You can't have that back.
Memories can never be taken from you, Justin.
They can, though. It's called forgetting stuff, guy. It happens all the time.
Oh, shit.
I'm sorry I shut down your I'm 14 and this is deep comment.
Oh, that's so good. I like how much that tickled you.
So I think the genre is waiting for something right now. I think modern MMOs like WoW and Final Fantasy 14 especially, which I've been playing a lot of that too lately, is so convenient that it's almost too convenient. Like, literally everything I do, I teleport directly in front of or pick it out of a menu and I'm immediately teleported there. Like there what it does is it creates this situation. I know I'm way over on time. We have a whole other episode to do. It creates a situation where I'm filling out tasks. I'm not enjoying inhabiting a living world full of other people.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, like that's my time with Classic WoW I've enjoyed for that reason.
Yes,
you know, it's a pain in the ass and everything takes forever to do relative to like, you know, retail. Yeah, but it does feel more like a lived-in world.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what else feels like a lived-in world? Our Patreon at patreon.com/Retro Warriors, where you can check out Talking Wizards. That one's real lived in. Maybe a little we lived in that one a little too much. I think you can get uncut versions of the show where we talk for poop for like 10 minutes at the beginning of this episode and lament that Saturn isn't here. You can get Read Along, where we read old magazines that have babies in ski masks drinking beers with people for some strange reason. What else do we have on Patreon? Is that it? Is that everything? Is that our offerings?
That's about it.
Oh, no, I forgot. You also have our eternal gratitude.
Oh, you get special channels in Discord.
You do. We have a Talking Wizards channel in Discord that only... I remember when I made it, Saturn was like, I don't want to segment out the Discord. Like, I don't want people to not be able to go to a channel. And I was like, I don't either. We need to make it something dumb. And I was like, I know. Let's make it a Talking Wizards channel. No one's going to be upset that they can't talk in it, but it'll be cool for people that can. And that was our...
I like every so often we get somebody who doesn't read the rules and they can only talk in the Talking Wizards channel.
Because they are a patron?
Yeah.
Next time it happens, let's all just pretend that that's all the Discord is. Let's just be like, what do you mean? It's just a Talking Wizards channel. Did you want more? Yeah, I don't understand. We want to thank the following patrons for their very kind donations, starting with Michael Kibetti,
David Cavallari,
Konshu,
Sean Schaller,
Adam Williams,
Chris Forbes,
Sad Billy Mitchell noises,
Chris Menoche,
Sean S.,
Edward Majewski Jr.,
or all the patrons we want to thank for their very kind donations. And we want to thank you for listening. Oh, thank you so much. It's so cool of you to listen to the whole show all the way to the end right here. And so just for you, because you made it all the way here, because you're special to us, Guy's going to tell you his deepest personal secret. Go ahead.
There's a dude in the car right now going, "You're fucking welcome, boys."
Just real solid guy, that guy. Anyway, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.
This bud's for you.